Occam's razor, often summarized as the simplest explanation is usually the correct one, is a principle attributed to the 14th century English philosopher and theologian William of Ockham. Its core idea is that when faced with competing explanations for a phenomenon, one should prefer the hypothesis that makes the fewest assumptions, provided it adequately accounts for the observed evidence. While not a strict rule or scientific law, Occam's razor is a heuristic tool widely used in science, philosophy, and critical thinking to guide reasoning and hypothesis selection. The principle stems from Occam's work in logic and metaphysics, particularly his emphasis on parsimony in explanations. He argued that entities or assumptions should not be multiplied beyond necessity, often expressed in Latin as entitia non sunt multiplicanda praeter necessitatem. This does not mean the simplest explanation is always true, but rather that it is more likely to be correct because it relies on fewer and proven elements, reducing the risk of error. For example, if a patient exhibits symptoms like fever and cough, a doctor might first consider a common infection like the flu rather than a rare tropical disease, unless evidence suggests otherwise. In science, Occam's razor is invaluable for model building and theory selection. Consider astronomy. When Copernicus proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system, it explained planetary motion with fewer assumptions than the geocentric Ptolemaic system, which required complex epicycles. The simpler heliocentric model, being more parsimonious, gained favor as it accounted for observations without unnecessary complications. Similarly, in physics, Einstein's theory of relativity is often favored over more convoluted alternatives because it explains phenomena like gravity and time dilation with elegant, minimal assumptions. However, simplicity alone isn't enough. Occam's razor applies only when competing explanations have equal explanatory power. If a simpler model fails to account for key data, a more complex one may be justified. For instance, in biology, the theory of evolution by natural selection is complex but preferred over simpler creationist explanations because it better fits the vast evidence from fossils, genetics, and ecology. The razor thus balances simplicity with adequacy, ensuring explanations are neither overly simplistic nor needlessly elaborate. In philosophy, Occam's razor has sparked debate. Some argue it's merely a practical guideline, not a universal truth, as reality can sometimes be complex. Others, like Karl Popper, tied it to falsifiability, suggesting simpler theories are easier to test and refute, advancing scientific progress. Critics, however, caution against over-reliance, noting that history shows complex truths, like quantum mechanics, sometimes defy simpler expectations. In everyday life, Occam's razor helps cut through misinformation and conspiracy theories. For example, claims of extraterrestrial visitors might be exciting, but mundane explanations like optical illusions or human error often suffice. The razor encourages skepticism of elaborate narratives that pile on assumptions without evidence, fostering clearer thinking. Limitations exist. Simplicity is subjective and context-dependent. What seems simple in one field may not in another. Cultural or cognitive biases can also skew perceptions of what's simple. Moreover, the razor doesn't guarantee truth. It's a probabilistic tool, not a magic wand. Over-applying it risks dismissing complex realities, as seen in early resistance to germ theory, which seemed less intuitive than simpler miasma theories. Ultimately, Occam's razor remains a cornerstone of rational inquiry. It doesn't dictate answers but guides us toward explanations that are elegant yet robust, minimizing unnecessary complexity while respecting evidence. By favoring parsimony, it sharpens our reasoning, whether we're unraveling cosmic mysteries or navigating daily decisions. In a world awash with information, its call for simplicity without sacrifice is more relevant than ever.